Pops in a pod. Pops in a pod.
Hey everyone, Peter Pop here.
Hi, and I am Nadir Pop.
This is coming a few days later, but don't worry, there's a reason for it because we've got a very special guest all the way from the UK, and he's a fellow podcaster himself. So, welcome to popsinapod, Al Booth.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. This is lovely to be asked on.
Yeah, and I have to say a huge shout out to Sarah from the podcast community that's part of video because she actually connected us. And when she did, I was like, wait, we've not had like a guest who's not Indian for a really long time. So, you know what? We definitely have to get this going. Just to start off with, right? The reason Nadir and I are excited is it's not often that we get to speak to a fellow podcaster, and more than that, someone talking about parenting, especially from a dad's perspective. So where did it all begin, or where did it all start for you?
What, being a dad or podcasting or both?
Podcasting. Both.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard about this. There was a coronavirus, a COVID-19. It made a couple of headlines. I don't know if you saw that. But so my background is radio, commercial radio, and I started 25 years ago, far too long. So when I turned 40, was turning 40, that was when we were pregnant with our first child. And I suddenly thought, well, I'm going to be a dad and I'm going to be 40. I need to work at the BBC. I can't be having fun playing music and making stuff up. I need to be at the BBC doing grown-up things. And we did. So that's what I did. I joined the BBC about 2 weeks after my child. I've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And it was 2 weeks after my 5-year-old was born, I joined the BBC. And then I was there in 2017. And then this lockdown happened in 2020. And I had no work like so many people because I was freelancing. And the man who got me into radio way back when, I used to fax him. I worked in a roofing firm and I faxed him jokes. And then he went, do you want to be my producer? And so I did. And that's how I got into radio. And during lockdown, he said, I'm making podcasts. Do you want to make a podcast about being a dad? Because I had a little baby. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. Because I've got nothing else to do. I can literally go nowhere and do nothing. And also, a baby isn't someone you can really play with, is it? It's not like you can run around. And so yeah, that's how it really started.
I was listening to, in fact, Peter and I both were listening to your podcast, and we realized that here we are in India, starting this platform for dads, right? And the whole idea came up with that. Listen, let's just check online if there's anything that's there, because Peter and I also became, our dad journey was pretty close to each other. I already had 5-month-old baby. Peter's wife was pregnant, and we kind of figured that, okay, we need to do something. And that's when we realized that there's nothing for dads out there right now. Again, I'm talking to you from a very India perspective. Now, when we saw your podcast, when we were listening to how to be a dad, right, this thought came to our mind that in the UK, is it other people in terms of the listeners, or as you said that you are also a producer from a podcast standpoint, from a parenting content standpoint, is the level that mature that you have these platforms specifically for dads? Because in India, it's still us, it still pops in a pod, right? Like what's your version of that?
So I've just realised my chronology as well of everything I just said. So I worked at the BBC when my son was born, and the podcast in 2020 was when my daughter was born. That was it. So the BBC, it was BBC for my son, got made redundant because there was a virus, and we had our daughter. So our daughter was born 10 days before the UK's first lockdown. So that was when everyone was sitting around and said, do you want to do a dad podcast? And actually, JK is the guy who got me into radio and offered me this podcast. He works with there's a setup called the Dad's Net, which is this whole company and community just for dads. We have, I don't know if they have the Mum's Net in India. We have Mum's Net. I don't know if it's a global thing. It's just this huge community for mums, funnily enough. And someone set up one to dads in the UK called Dad's Net. So it's, blogs and it's articles and it's features and all this. And then they got into podcasting. So but I'm the same as you. Yeah, I even in the UK, I didn't really think it was a big thing for dads to talk to other dads about it. But yeah, there is. There's a real growing, and we've got a few podcasts over here. I think the number one, it's always in the top three podcast, is two comedians called Josh Widdicombe and Rob Beckett, and they do a podcast which is Parenting Hell, it's called. And they're just two dads, again, really young children, decided to do it after they had babies. And there's quite a few. So yeah, it's in terms of being mature, I think, yeah, definitely it's been around for a while now. I mean, still nowhere near as big as mums talking to other mums, but it's nice, because initially it was always, I thought dads would just talk about, oh, we're going to get the boys to watch football and they're going to do sports, and when they're older they're going to drink beer, and there is still that, but it's, yeah, there's just a lot of emotional support, because that's the other thing as well. Dads need emotional support, and I don't think anyone really, that's still a taboo really over here. Yeah, and probably more so by the sounds of it, more so where you are.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the next things I wanted to talk to you about, right? Because when a lot of people meet Nadir and me, it's this novelty or this new factor that, oh, dad's talking about parenting, right? But what I'm getting from the Dad's Net and the various podcasts available, it's not just about parenting, right? There's many nuances or many factors. And I think, just to at least start off with this, can you tell us, like, why essentially it's required, right? Because you've seen with the Dad's Net a variety of podcasts. It's not just one podcast, right? I mean, Nadir and I on the podcast try to cover as much, but there's only two of us, right? So if you could just kind of tell us, like, where do you see the need really? Because I think, like, unfortunately, India is still a couple of steps behind when it comes to just awareness about parenting, right, for dads, let alone like podcasts and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, the Dad's Net does a couple of other podcasts. One's called Loose Dads, which is three or four dads sometimes, and that is just the whole lads, and laughing about, what men would talk about in a pub, really, and that's great, and it's good to listen to. And there's another one where two of them talk, and it's a similar thing. The one I did. And there's another one called Dad Vengers, which is, there's a guy called Nigel Clark who does TV shows on BBC for kids. Do you know Nigel? He's brilliant. He does the baby club and the toddler club and these things that, where your children watch and you find yourself watching, even though you're in your 40s and they've gone to bed, and you think the TV's still, I'm still watching this. They've been in bed an hour. I'm still watching. He does one of those shows, but he does a podcast, and it's just that very open conversation about. And the one I did, How to Be a Dad, was, it followed the stages from finding out you're going to be a dad all the way through to having a child, and then the bit after. And that was just kind of the blueprint we had for it. But then you find dads just opening up, and it's funny, isn't it? Because if you think of other dads, I don't know how it sounds similar to where you are, but you think of other dads and it's like this loose dads where they're just laughing and joking. But actually, if you sit down for an hour, chances are you're going to get this, these stories, and these stories came out about, and I think everyone will have been through. I don't know. Obviously, I've just met you guys, so I don't know how the birth was, but certainly with our oldest, with the 5-year-old, his heart rate dropped, and we had doctors rushing in and trying to get it back up, and it was fine. It wasn't a major thing, because they see this sort of thing 4 or 5 times a day, probably, these doctors. But when you're a dad and you're there and you know nothing, it's frightening. But everyone had a similar story to that. So yeah, there's the, having a laugh and a joke and all that, but it's really nice just to speak to other dads and just know that you're not on your own, that everyone's gone through these frightening little stages, and it's quite common. And my son was born, I really struggled. So I've taken medication for depression and anxiety. I've had it since I was a teenager. I've taken it for years, and I came off it because I thought, when my son's born, I want to be clear-minded and fresh. But it was just such a struggle. And now it's weird, because he's 5 and my daughter's 2, and they're little characters and they run around. You can play with them, you can communicate, but they communicate back. And then you think, I don't know, I've got no answer to this. So I think, well, how was it tough with a baby? Because they didn't do anything. How could I struggle when I just had this? But I did. I don't know why. But yeah, and then you talk to other dads and they think, oh yeah, I struggled as well, and I struggled, and it's not just mums, you know. So yeah, I think there are whatever you want to listen to. If you want to listen to people having a laugh, you can do that. But yeah, there's also really open and honest podcasts out there for dads. It's just normal, isn't it? It's weird. It's still a bit of a taboo, but you find that everyone goes through it.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you actually said that. Even you're in a completely different country, and even you have to use terms like it's a taboo, right? Because you just assume that, oh, here are the men, they guzzling down beer and talking manly masculine things. But I think everyone has a softer side, and that's one thing through Pops in a Pod that Peter and I were constantly uh, trying to unravel the fact that, listen, there are men out there, dads, who want to talk, who want to share stories. And that's the whole point. And that's why I was I really like the fact, your tagline, your podcast tagline, that says that it's anecdotes and, not answers, because that's exactly how we also push our stories as well. That we're not here to give you tips, we're not here to give you advice, we're here to tell you stories. And we had quite a few dads who actually came and say, after the recordings, and they're like, it feels so nice. I I felt as if I belonged somewhere. It was therapeutic for them. Like a doctor, imagine a doctor was talking to us and he's like, wow, I felt great. This was so therapeutic that I get to speak to fellow dads. I barely get a chance to do this. And I think the acceptance is kind of going up. Don't you feel that, Al? Do you feel that the acceptance of being a dad and sharing stories, irrespective of the platform, whether it's podcasts, blogs, or whatever, the acceptance is going up, and they want to share stories. They want to talk about their fatherhood.
I think so. Yeah, I think definitely. And I don't know why that is. Whether it's just the time we live in and social media, for although it has many, many faults, it's also really great because all it takes is one person to tweet, I'm struggling as a dad, or the other thing I notice as well, it's quite easy to say, like, I'll be honest, I'm really tired today as I talk to you, because my 5-year-old doesn't sleep through the night and he sleepwalks a bit as well. And then our 2-year-old, my daughter, has just started crying out. And usually she cries out and you run up to her and she's still asleep and then she's settled. But she kept crying last night. So I got her, my fiance got in my son's bed and I got our 2-year-old in my bed. And she sleeps horizontally. She does, her head's on the pillow, but so is her body and her feet and her legs. But her feet are in my eyes. So you have a night of, I'm just like, you're 2 and the bed's big for me. Why can't you just use it as a bed? It's simple. So yes, there's, yes, I'm quite tired today. Sorry, I've completely gone off tangent then, haven't I? But yeah, so I think you're right. What you said, it's therapeutic and it's a nice release, and people just want to share experiences. So for all I can go, oh, I'm so tired. When kids get in your bed and they just kick you and people can share all those experiences because it's a laugh, isn't it? It's not really showing your true self. It's all that sort of but I think more and more, for people do that, more and more people are coming out and saying, do you know what, I woke up this morning, my little 2-year-old was holding my hand and it was just it's the most beautiful thing. You can't create that. That's just natural. And I think lots of dads are, and as well as mums, obviously, but lots of dads are sharing moments like that. And that's the beauty of social media, because you see one person doing it and then another person comes out and goes, oh, actually, for all I do the jokes and the laughs and that, I really like those moments. And yeah, it's just really nice, I think. It's strange because you'll know as podcasters and dads, you can get into this community and it becomes a bit blinkered. So for all I can say, yeah, the world's opening up and everyone's talking about it. I don't know whether that's true or whether it is just because I'm, in that world. That's my interest now. Pre-kids, my interest was going out and having fun and, whatever. And now it is just kids and podcasts in a shed. It's that narrow is my life.
That's the great tagline. Now, one of the things, Al, I really was curious about, and I think this is one of the reasons I mainly wanted to talk to you, is just how different parenting is. And I think, like, you would have also similarly experienced talking to other dads, that sometimes it's not really how different you are, it's how similar you are. And I thought it'll be great to kind of just go through that journey, especially talking to someone across seas, so to say, right?
Yeah, of course. No, that's a really good point. Yeah, because little humans are little humans, aren't they? And they just, they all do they haven't learned how to behave in certain ways. So of course they just do what is the very base natural instinct, and we're all just as grown-ups trying to work out.
The first one I actually wanted to talk to you, and this is actually something that Nadir and I remember initially bonded about, because Nadir and I used to work together in the same office. And I remember talking to Nadir and saying, because we were at a digital agency back then, I was like, hey, did you know that our office allows dads to take a week off? And I was like really happy about it. And then cut down to like few years later, there are some offices who say there's parental leave. It doesn't matter if you're the father or the mother. And all of a sudden my 1 week looked like really small. So the perspective in India is that, you know what, things are always better abroad. But break that down for us. Did you have paternity leave or parental leave at all?
Yeah, so this is where I'm not the right person to speak to about this, essentially, because I'm freelance and self-employed. So, so basically, if I don't work, I don't get paid. Let me think. When my son was born, and also it was very tricky with my daughter, but I'll explain why. When my son was born, I was working part-time, so I still worked because that was my only source of income, but I cut it down. So I was doing travel reports on local radio in the afternoon. So I went in at just after lunchtime, got back about 7 at night. So, so I was getting paid, but not fully. But in the UK, I know enough of friends, as my partner always pointed out, friends with proper jobs who can take time off and get paid, like proper people. So yeah, I've got friends who have 2 weeks off. That's it. Paternity leave, maternity leave, mat leave is still months and months, obviously, as well it should be. And paternity leave is 2 weeks here in the UK. And then, parenting leave. But I think parenting leave, again, depends on the company you work for, probably, and how that works out. With our daughter, she was born 10 days before the UK went into the first lockdown. So we were in the hospital. We could still go in the hospital, but there were all these sort of swirls. I think masks weren't involved then, but I do remember in the hospital ward, and you have the beds with the curtains round, and I do remember there was just me and my partner and our little baby, and in the one next to us there was about 15 people in there with snacks and bags of food, having like right time of it. It's like the best social life ever in that one. So that felt strange because it's so close to the lockdown. But yes, lockdown was 10 days after my daughter was born. So my daughter was born. I had still freelance, had a couple of shifts presenting radio for the BBC booked in because Sienna was 10 days late as well. So I'd booked these shifts in to present radio thinking, oh, she'll have been home by 10 days then. We'll be used to it. It's a second child. She's probably going to be walking by then. But she was born and I had to go in the next day and do work. And then I did that for 2 or 3 days after. And then I thought, right, I'm going to take time off. I'm self-employed. I can make the decision. Saved some of the money from the work I've just done. And then this lockdown kicked in and the BBC stopped using freelancers. And my paternity leave essentially turned out being 2 years. So, yeah. And then got into podcasting because I was like, I need to do something. I can't be on paternity for 2 years. I'm just going to be at university and I'm still going, well, I'm on paternity. So, but it's... I know what you mean. But I don't think we're that far ahead of you in terms of it's still a fairly recent thing, and it's still there's nowhere near it being equal between mums and dads. But again, I've not had to push a little baby out of my body after growing it, so I think mums probably do need longer to recover. Perhaps no, they definitely do actually.
I don't think there's any debate over there, but Peter and I were doing so much research because we have done dedicated episodes on paternity leave, and we realized that the Scandinavian countries come very close to the whole equal thing, about 160 days for both men and women, and obviously women can extend it to another 90 odd days, and like some really crazy numbers, which is extremely heartful to hear that here are countries who genuinely understand that. in India, obviously, the kind of experiences and the kind of stories that we hear is that if you're a salaried individual, a man, and if you take a paternity leave, that immediately affects your progress within the company, right? That, oh wow, you've taken paternity leave, oh my god, you're going to miss out on so much work, xyz, blah blah blah. So men actually do not take paternity leave because there's this constant fear that they might miss out on some important projects where they could have delivered and showed their prowess or their skills or whatever it is. So there is that. Then you're kind of debating. So yeah, so every country I think has its own set of problems or issues that either the government or the company has to sort of fix. But you brought up the whole hospital experience, and I wanted to sort of pick your brains on that. Again, if you had to do a direct contrast, in India, we don't have the NHS, right? What's there in the UK? I mean, for us, it's a private experience. There are government hospitals, of course, but most of the people in the metro would go to a private hospital, and it's a package, and obviously you have to pay depending on the kind of experience that you want to have. Pretty hefty amount, but in the UK, there's no such thing, right? Could you explain us how that works?
Yeah, do you know what you forget? It's funny what you take for granted, isn't it? And of course, we're so lucky here. So the NHS, the National Health Service, was set up in, I think it was the 50s. You might want to fact check that. In the UK, and what we do is each month, whether you get salaried or if you're self-employed freelance, you put money aside for tax, but also for national insurance. And if you're working, you get a salary. Obviously, your wage gets taxed, and then national insurance gets taken out of it, which is a lot smaller amount than your tax. But your national insurance essentially goes to keep the NHS going. But then you'll just, if I suddenly now even think, I feel a bit of a headache or something, I'll just phone up the doctor, go down and have a chat with the doctor for 10 minutes. And if the doctor says you need to go to hospital, I'll go to hospital. And when you're having a baby, you just get, that's what we did. We went to the doctor with my son. We went to the doctor with the firstborn, and the doctor was new. And we said, well, we've taken a test. We're not sure what to do next. So we thought we'll come and see you. And he said, I'm new. I've not really set up properly. I'll Google it. So we went to see the doctor, and he Googled what we should do next. It's like, oh man, that was our first official experience of being pregnant, and this journey with all these experts thinking
this is hilarious. I'm sorry, but this is hilarious.
He didn't even do it like so it wasn't like he was sitting here and we were sitting the other side of the computer. We were at the side, so we could see the screen. So he wasn't even trying to hide it. He was just like, an actual Google, not even Dr. Google or anything special, just the Google that we all use.
God bless his soul.
I know. He's great though. He's still our doctor, and he's brilliant. He's but that was a bit worrying. But yeah,
so turned out fine. I mean
somehow it all worked out. They were just there, and as he was coming out, Googling, do we pull? Do we leave? Yeah, I forgot about that. So so we went and saw the doctor, and then you make the appointment to go to the hospital. And because you pay national insurance, and you just grow up through life, not even thinking twice about it. So you pay your national insurance, make an appointment with the midwife. She does the scan, and then you see the baby, and that's it. And you just keep turning up, and you don't have to pay. We can do private and medical insurance, obviously, because the NHS. That's the other thing. Certainly on the back of COVID as well. There's such a backlog, and it's really, doctors and nurses aren't paid. Certainly nurses aren't paid anywhere near as much as they should be. That's always a contentious issue, and it's an amazing thing to have. It's not as well supported by the government as it should be, but that's a whole different subject. But you forget. Yeah, we're so lucky. So what happens then in India when you have children?
Well, you just basically have to break the piggy bank, as I would put it mildly.
Can I ask how much it is?
I don't know. I'm trying to think. it depends, right? Like, how do I put it? I can give you a simple analogy, right? Do you want a simple diesel car, or do you want like a Ferrari with two
Oh,
doors,
okay.
top of the line? Like, you can have that, right? And it depends on which end of the spectrum that you
Do you want
want,
a doctor who
that you can
Googles or a
do.
doctor who knows how to do it?
But see, that's the thing, right? I mean, like, I remember some of the simple expenses. Like, also we have to put it to context that times have really changed, right? Like, since the time we were born, medical technology has advanced so much. Like, I remember going for a scan every 3 months, every trimester with my wife, and I had family members saying, like, back when y'all were like in the womb, we barely did like one scan, but then now we know far more, right? So it's also depends. So it's just the perspective that you look at it also, on what you want. I mean, like, let's be honest, like, if you're a multimillionaire, a Ferrari is
Yeah.
a impulse purchase, or if you're someone like us who grew up in like the middle class, a Ferrari is way out
Yeah.
of our
Yeah.
purchase, right? So I think it's kind of that perspective that you add. Yeah, I mean, the last thought I want to add over here, at one point I remember the way I was being told, because you have to select a hospital, right? You go, it's not just the hospital that's the closest to you. You can pick whichever one that you want. And I remember going to an hospital with my wife, and the way I was told that you can go to this kind of room or that kind of room kind of reminded me of when you go to a hotel and you're told that, okay, do you want a sea facing room, or do you want one which is say, I'm just like, dude, what's the
It's a
difference?
thing.
Like,
Yeah, it's a thing. By the way, it's a thing. Sea facing is a thing in hospitals,
Oh,
in
really?
at least in Mumbai.
yeah,
Amazing.
I mean, we live by the coast, but you get what I mean, right? Like, at some point when you think of just the basic need, it's, you just need
Just,
a place to
yes.
recuperate.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like all of these various factors. Now, among the three of us, Al, you're the only one with two kids. So, at least in your limited experience so far, and you've at least kind of touched upon it with your daughter, does having a kid the second time around become easier or harder? I mean, leaving COVID aside,
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Of
course.
course. Yeah. A bit. I don't know if easy is the right word, but I mean, there was still. So when my daughter was born, she wasn't coming for ages, and we were in the hospital, and the midwife said, right, just said to my partner, just go to sleep. Because so it was getting into we'd been there all day, and then it was getting into the night, and it was getting up to, must have been getting on for 1 o'clock in the morning. And she said, right, just, we're going to turn the lights down. I've sat in the big chair next to my partner. They put her bed back, just go to sleep. So we started going to sleep, and then all these sounds started flashing, and the monitors, and beep, 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 beep. And there was a panic, so everyone rushed in, and all it was that my partner was so relaxed because she started to sleep that our daughter had started to come out because she could just come out. And there was that thing of knowing, when I said about my son's blood pressure dropped, and have it the first time going, the second time I was like, is everything okay? And they went, yeah, it's okay. And then you just think, okay. It was the first time. Yeah, okay. And the first time, I don't know what it was like when you had your children, but you're kind of holding them as if they're the little porcelain thing, and you don't even want to move, and you move your whole body so they're so close to you. And yeah, it changes with your second. They're like, just fling them about, it's fine. Not quite like that, but do you know what I mean? You support the head and all that, but you just know a bit more, because it's like anything, I suppose. You know, the first one is going into the unknown completely, isn't it? And the second one, you think, oh, well, she's crying. When going back to when I was getting, I went back onto my antidepressant medication because my son was crying and I didn't know why, and I couldn't figure it out. And I couldn't figure out with Sienna, with my daughter. I just thought, oh, she's crying. So she's either needs a nappy changing, she's hungry. But I can sort all of those. I can sort. It'll be one. Just keep going until she stops. Yeah. So I think it's easy. I don't know if easy is the right word, but you're more prepared. You have more in your sort of, in your toolbox that you can reach in and go, right, this is why this is happening. It's probably going to be okay. If she cries, probably don't need to phone the hospital. Probably just need to sit down and put on some nursery rhymes.
It's so refreshing to hear this from a dad because you always hear this from moms, right? That, oh yeah, the second one is, just, yeah, they can do whatever they want. But the first one is like, oh, treasure, protect, and all of that, right? But when a dad tells you that, yeah, second one, just fling her about here and there, it's perfectly all right. Nothing's wrong. I'll manage it. So, I really appreciate the fact that here are three dads who know exactly what they are doing and what they're talking about because it's coming from experience. So
Okay, sorry,
that's
can I just
always
jump
great
in?
to.
I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I still don't know exactly what I'm doing. I don't think I'll ever know exactly what I'm doing. I hope I'm not giving that impression. I'm clueless.
No, but it's good clueless, right? The fact that you can recount all these experiences and everything like blow by blow, that's all that matters at this point, right? Because there's nobody who's coming and say, oh, he's a dad, what does he know? He just shows up, right? And that's not the case with today's dads, and that's the best part. That's the best part about having these dad platforms like your podcast, our podcast, and wherever it is. But Al, there's this one burning question that we had, again, from a very contrast standpoint, and I would love to ask you this, and we would love to know. So in India, there's a lot of support, right? Family support and your domestic help support. What's it like for you guys, right? Because India is known for joint families. You live with your parents even when you're older. I mean, even when you have kids, you still live with your parents or your uncles or your aunts or whatever it is. And the fact that a child is raised by the village, I think, came from India because, yeah, well, so what's it like with you guys? I mean, I understand from whatever conversation that we've been having so far, it's you, your partner, and your kids, right? You all live together as a nuclear family, but what about the additional support? How does that work?
Oh, I mean, that's great. So I live in just outside Birmingham in the UK. So we have a huge Indian population here. So yeah, so I've got a lot of friends I know about the family, the family setup, and it always, I think that just looks brilliant. It looks so good and so welcoming, and everyone's together, the generations. But also, then I visit my parents who live 2 hours away for a weekend, and I think, how does anyone live with their parents? So yeah, so there's the contrast.
Yep. I think it's like literally, right? I heard this saying the other day. It's like everyone says the grass is always greener on the other side, but the grass is always greener on the side that you actually pour water. If you think about
Nice.
it.
Oh, I like that. Oh, yeah, I'm definitely going to use that. I'm going to borrow that. Yes, my daughter, as I speak to you, my daughter goes to her nan's. So my parents live two hours away. My partner's parents live 10 minutes away. So my daughter goes to her nanny's. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and that's where she is now. We go around there on a Sunday. My partner's sister lives equally 10 minutes away. She has a 6-year-old, and so she has a 6-year-old who's a year older than my son. So they're both boys, very close. And then they've got a 2-year-old as well, and their 2-year-old was born in February. Ours was born in March. So they're double trouble growing up together. So yeah, in terms of that, I think we don't all live together. We live close to each other. We can go and see each other and spend Sundays together, and we're all going out at the weekend, all the family. But then we'll come back to our own and just decompress a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I must admit, I'd love to live closer to my parents. 2 hours is quite 2 hours. 2 hours is quite a journey. 2 hours when you've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old in the back of the car is an eternity. Especially when we haven't bought iPads or anything for them, and it's just. Are you aware of the Gruffalo? Do you have the Gruffalo books over there, Julie? Yeah. So we've got a CD for the car, which has got the songs of the Gruffalo and other songs invented by Julia Donaldson, who wrote them. And at first you think, this is lovely, and then 2.5 hours later, just like, and you can't destroy
Everything sounds like Baby
you
Shark.
Can't
Let's
destroy
be
a
honest.
CD. They just don't destroy. Can't get rid of them. But yeah, I think that's probably We're really lucky. We've got family close by, and I've got I'm 45. My brother-in-law, next one down, is 37, and then below that is 32. And 3 of us are very close. There's 3 sisters. My partner has 2 sisters, three brothers, and we're all really close. So we'll talk quite openly about our kids as well and stuff. So we're really lucky. It's not typical. Not everyone's as fortunate. What I'm coming away from this podcast is going, we've got the NHS and an amazing family. I feel really blessed after doing this. I'm really glad I did it.
You remember what I said earlier about the grass, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that is true.
Oh my God. But you know what? Trust me, Al, I think we have to get you very soon on the podcast again. I think this is just like one of the many various things we can talk about, right? But I think we should call it a wrap for now, because I think one thing about podcasters I've noticed: put a mic in front of us and you'll never get us stop talking. So,
That is so true.
Thanks so much for sharing with us and just kind of helping us get some perspective on just like how parenting is in a different country. But before we let you go, time to plug in whatever you want to plug in: your podcast, the work that you're doing. Tell us more. How can our listeners hear more from you?
Oh, blimey. Well, there's the existing podcast we've talked about called How to Be a Dad. And the reason I say How to Be a Dad, and at the bottom it says anecdotes, not answers, because How to Be a Dad sounds like it's going to have the answers. And as we can all testify, no one does. Over the thousands and tens and millions of years, no one has any answers. So there's that out there. And I'm doing a new podcast called Dad Asks Mums, where... because what I discovered for the podcast where I talk to dads, there was a couple I spoke to. I spoke to a mum about breastfeeding, so I could understand a bit more about that, and also just about the birth. And then I thought, do you know what? We don't know, for all. And you alluded to it earlier when you were saying about choosing the hospital room. You're thinking of your partner and you want their comfort. And yeah, I thought, do you know what? I could learn so much more about what it's like from a mum's perspective, because it's great talking to dads and other dads, and it's great to find out you're not the only one and everyone's got something in common you can share. But I've got no idea what it's like to be a mum, and there's only so much you can ask your own partner before she friend zones you, really. So that's my new podcast, is Dad Asks Mums. So I'm looking forward to launching that very soon.
Thanks so much, Al. And I'll definitely listen to it, because I've started listening to How to Be a Dad, and it's exciting because the number of guests that you bring in one episode, and you're constantly listening to new experiences. So it's great. We'll definitely listen to the second one also. And interesting thing, talking to mums as dads. I think it's very interesting. That's something that we are constantly doing on the podcast, but we'd love to hear a different perspective altogether. But thank you so much for your time and sharing all of those beautiful stories and anecdotes with us. And yes, as Peter said, we'd love to have you back on the podcast, and we'll talk about something even more specific, perhaps.
Oh, Peter and Nadir, I've loved it. Thank you so much. That was so enjoyable. Thank you. Do you know, as well, can I just say, I know we finished, but you don't really get to talk about, you don't relive your memories, do you? Unless someone specifically asks you. And then you tend to forget about these moments, and then you get to do it again. It's lovely. Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, that's a wrap on this episode. So for all of you still tuned in, why don't you tell us what you thought of this episode? Did you feel similar to Al? Did it re-jog your memories of the time you just became a parent, a father, mother? Let us know. You can email us at popsinapod@gmail.com, or you can even get in touch with us on Facebook or Instagram or any social media. Just search Popsinapod. But that's all for now. We'll see you next week.